Welcome back to The Mind, a podcast series by the Ramakrishna Vedanta Centre, New Zealand. A conversation at the meeting point of modern science and the contemplative traditions of yoga and Vedanta. I'm Rama, your host. Last time, the group opened a new module and learnt what it is for. Not transcendence, not fixing something broken, but a coherent, well-tuned life, human flourishing, the natural condition of a mind back in fit. Swamiji laid out 4 doorways into that life and promised that today they would step through the first and fastest of them. So today, the walking begins, and the door they walk through is the oldest one the species knows: rhythm and sound, the slow breath, the repeated word, the chant sung together. Swamiji is going to make a quietly startling claim about why these work, that it is not a matter of belief or even of culture, but something closer to a structural fact, the way water finds the shortest path downhill. He will show what the slow breath actually does inside the body, why a sacred sound is built the way it is, and, most practically of all, why the same calming practice can help one person and do nothing for another. Because, as he puts it, the most common reason rhythm fails is that the wrong rhythm was offered to the wrong system. The technology of rhythm and sound. Let's join them. The same room. There is an ease in it this week that was not there during the long weeks of diagnosis, the lightness of people who have been handed something to actually do.
Last week I gave each of you something small to carry. Sarah, you were to catch a moment you were already in fit and just notice it. Did one come?
It did, and it caught me off guard. Sunday morning, both kids reading on the sofa, tea still hot. My first instinct was to start planning the day. Instead, I just thought, this is the baseline. It's already here. I almost cried, which surprised me. I think I'd been so busy escaping the bad that I'd stopped noticing the good was a real place I'd already lived.
That is the whole I we are training, Sarah, and you trained it in one morning. James, you were to find the most fragmented thing in your classroom and name its doorway, without fixing it yet.
Attention, no contest. And naming the doorway, rather than reaching for a trick, was oddly hard. I'm a fixer. But you were right. Sitting with, "This points to the attention door, which we haven't opened yet," made me curious instead of frustrated. I came in this week genuinely wanting the tool, not just wanting the problem to stop.
Curiosity is the right hunger to arrive with. Kai, yours was the experiment. The slow breath, no belief required, before something stressful.
Yeah, before a presentation I was dreading. 6 breaths a minute, longer out than in, about 3 minutes in a stairwell. And annoyingly it worked. My hands stopped shaking. I want to know why though, because it just works isn't good enough for me. If it's real, there's a mechanism.
And you will have the mechanism today, Kai, in full. That is exactly where we are going. Dr. Watson, you offered the breath to a few patients as restoration rather than repair.
I did, and the shift was almost entirely in how they received it. The same instruction, framed as "we are helping a system that works get back in tune," landed completely differently from "here is something to fix you." One man with stubborn hypertension actually leaned in. But I'll be honest, Swamiji, I taught it on faith. I told him it settles the nervous system because I've read that it does. I would like to be able to tell him how, in a way I actually understand.
Then this lesson is, in a sense, for the clinician in all of you. Because today we open the machine and look inside. You have all felt rhythm work. Today you learn why it must. Let us begin with the most surprising thing of all, that rhythm is not one good option among many. It is the shortest road home. And we can say almost exactly why. Kai, let me start with your question, because it is the right one. You slowed your breath and your body settled. Why should that be? Why not slow your thoughts directly, or simply decide to be calm?
I've tried deciding to be calm. It's useless. Telling yourself to relax is like telling yourself to fall asleep.
Exactly so. And that uselessness is a clue. There is something the system will not do on command, and something it will do almost gratefully. Let me draw you the shape of why. Cast your mind back to the picture we have carried since Module 3. The mind as a meeting of waves, and behind it that diagram of how everything unfolds from a single source. In that picture there are, in effect, three kinds of state a system can be in. There is scatter, the churning, restless, fragmented activity of ordinary mental life, pulling in every direction at once. There is rhythm, a single, steady, repeating pulse. And there is integration, the deep, settled coherence we have been calling fit, the still center.
And I'm guessing the trick is getting from the first to the third.
That is the whole trick, James. And here is the thing almost nobody realizes. You cannot get there directly. There is no road that runs straight from scatter to integration. Every path from the churn to the still center passes through one place first. Rhythm. The steady pulse is the bridge, and it is the only bridge. In the tradition, this is not a poetic image. It is closer to a law of the structure, as reliable as the fact that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. The scattered system cannot leap to stillness, but it can be coaxed into a rhythm, and a sustained rhythm settles of its own accord toward stillness. So if you want the shortest road home, you do not aim at calm. You aim at pulse. You give the system a steady beat, and the beat carries it the rest of the way.
Okay, so that's why decide to be calm fails. I'm trying to jump straight to the far side of the bridge.
Precisely, Kai. And it is why deciding to breathe slowly succeeds, because a breath is a pulse, and a pulse is the on-ramp to the bridge. You are not commanding the destination. You are stepping onto the only road that reaches it. And notice the deep fact this explains. Every contemplative tradition the species has produced, working entirely independently, arrived at rhythm as its foundation. Vedic chanting, the repeated prayer of the Christian monk, the Sufi turning in remembrance, Zen breath counting. They did not copy one another. They each found the same bridge because there was only ever one bridge to find.
That genuinely moves me. The convergence. Different centuries, no contact, and they all land on a slow, repeated sound or breath. As a clinician, I trust the finding more when it shows up independently in many places. This is that across the whole of human history.
It is the strongest kind of evidence there is, Doctor. Now let me show you the road in the body, because this is your territory and Kai's question. Where in the machinery of a person does rhythm get its grip first?
The breath, presumably, since that's the one piece of the autonomic system we can take hold of voluntarily.
Just so. Of all the dials in the body, the one most directly wired to the breath is the body's gain, the switch we named last week between effort and recovery, alarm and rest. You cannot reach in and calm your heart by willing it, but you can slow your breath, and the breath is connected to the gain by a short, reliable cable. Slow the breath, and the gain begins to settle. That is the lever a 5-year-old can pull and a scientist can measure to the millisecond.
So when I'm wound tight and snappish, the wound tight actually is this gain being jammed on.
That is exactly what it is, Sarah, and it can jam in 2 opposite ways, which matters enormously, and we will return to it. It can be jammed on, the fast, anxious, can't settle state, the gain swinging wildly without ever reaching rest. Or it can be jammed low, the heavy, flat, can't start state, the gain too low to mount any response at all. Your wound tight is the first, but hold both in mind.
And the slow breath addresses the jammed-on version how, exactly? Kai wants the mechanism, and so do I now.
Here it is, as cleanly as I can give it. When you breathe at about 5 or 6 full breaths a minute, slower than usual, with the out-breath a little longer than the in-breath, something elegant happens. The breath, the heart, and the loop of nerves that manages your blood pressure all fall into step with one another. They phase lock, like 3 people who were walking out of time suddenly matching strides. Doctors have measured this state precisely. The variation in your heartbeat, beat to beat, rises sharply, often dramatically, and that rise is one of the clearest signs there is of a nervous system in good balance.
This is cardiac coherence. I have seen the traces. The heart rate rises on the in-breath and falls on the out-breath in a clean wave locked to the breathing. And the research base is not small. Slow-paced breathing has measurable effects on anxiety, on depression, on high blood pressure, on chronic pain, without the side effects of medication. I just never had the picture of why. The breath is the one wave I can consciously set, and everything else entrains to it.
That is the whole of it, Doctor. And see what follows. Once the game settles, everything downstream of it benefits without any extra effort. Attention, which could not hold while the alarm was ringing, begins to hold. The old filter of habit, which fires hardest when the body is agitated, loosens. The background static of worry drops. None of that has to be worked on directly. It is all downstream of the gain, and the gain is downstream of the breath. You slow one thing, and a cascade of good follows. That is why this is the fastest door. The practitioner does not have to wrestle their mind quiet. They have only to slow the breath and let the body do the rest.
So my stairwell 3 minutes wasn't a placebo. I literally pulled the one lever that's wired to the whole system.
You pulled the right lever, Kai, and the body kept its end of the bargain. Now, 2 honest cautions before we go further, because precision is a form of respect. First, the simple, slow breath I have described is safe for anyone to practice alone. But the wider tradition of breathwork includes vigorous and forceful techniques, breath retention and the rest, and Swami Vivekananda was emphatic that those, undertaken without a qualified teacher's direct guidance, can unsettle the very nervous system the gentle practice is meant to steady. So we teach here only what is safe to do on your own. The advanced repertoire rightly belongs to a teacher working with a student face-to-face. Second, the dose matters. 10 to 15 minutes is roughly the floor for a measurable shift, and 20 is reliably effective for most people. A single slow breath is a good reset. A settled nervous system takes a little sitting. So far, I have given you one practice, the slow breath, working on one dial, the gain. But rhythm and sound is a whole family, and the others reach parts of the mind the breath alone does not. Let me lay out the family, then take you into the most remarkable member of it. The breath practice, pranayama, the regulation of breath, works mainly on the gain, as we have seen. Then there is the repeated inner word, which the tradition calls japa, and the family of sacred sounds it uses, mantra. These work less on the body and more on attention itself, and on that filter of habit. And there is kirtana, rhythmic singing in a group, which does something none of the solo practices can. We will come to that. Let me start with the repeated word, because to understand it, you have to understand what a mantra actually is. And the answer is stranger and more precise than most people expect.
This is the part I brace for. A mantra is a magic word you repeat. That's where you usually lose me.
Then let me not lose you, Kai, because it is not magic, and it is not arbitrary. A mantra is best understood as a structured sound, built deliberately, the way a key is cut to a specific lock. To see why it is built the way it is, I have to tell you something the contemplative tradition holds about sound itself, and I will keep it plain. The claim is this: that sound is the subtlest layer of the manifest world, the first and finest form anything takes as it comes into being. Before a thing is an object, before it is even a clear thought, it is a kind of vibration, a name before a form.
That's a big claim. Is there any everyday handle on it?
There is, from your own experience as a parent, Sarah. Watch how a thought becomes real in you. Before you act, before you even picture the thing clearly, the thought usually arrives first as words, an inner murmur. The word comes before the deed. The tradition simply says the whole universe works that way. Name first, form after. And it gives the source of all sound a name, Nada Brahman, sound as the first ripple of the infinite. You do not have to accept the metaphysics to use the practice, but it explains why the practice reaches so deep. When you work with sound, you are taking hold of the world at its finest, earliest layer, the layer closest to its own source.
Alright, so if sound is that fundamental, how is a mantra actually built? You said structured, like a key.
Like a key and like a ladder. A full mantra has layers, and they form a graduated ladder of sound, from the easy and the familiar at the bottom up to silence at the top. Let me draw it. At the bottom rung is the name, a name of the divine that carries meaning and story and feeling, something the heart can reach for easily. Rama, Krishna, Shiva, Durga. This is the gross, friendly entry point, the rung your attention can already reach. Above it is what the tradition calls the bija, the seed sound. A single concentrated syllable with no dictionary meaning, a pure note rather than a word, encoding one specific quality of the infinite, love or grace or transforming power. It pulls attention to a finer level than the name can. Above that is Om, the source sound. And here is something beautiful. Om is built to contain the whole range of sound itself. Say it slowly. It opens at the back of the throat with Ah, the most open sound there is, rolls forward through Oo, and closes at the lips with Throat to lips, the entire span of what a human mouth can produce, beginning to end. And then, at the very top of the ladder, the silence the Om dissolves into, which the tradition says is the source from which all sound and all things arise.
So a single repetition of a full mantra is in effect a journey up that ladder. From a word you can feel to a finer sound to the all-containing sound to silence.
That is exactly what it is, Doctor. A path in miniature, walked with every repetition. And the tradition maps the climb onto 4 levels of sound, which describe not how loudly you say it, but where in you the sound is living. I will give you all 4, plainly. At the first level, Vaikari, the sound is spoken aloud, vibrating in the air, heard by the ears. This is the ground floor, and it is to be honored, not rushed past. The gross body is the instrument, and beginners who try to start silently, in the head, usually find the practice just dissolving into daydream. So begin out loud or on the lips. Let the body carry it.
That's a relief, honestly. Just say it out loud at first, I can do. It's the silent, mystical version that always felt impossible.
Then begin where it is possible, Sarah. That is the tradition's own advice. At the second level, Madhyama, the sound moves inward. No longer spoken, but a living inner murmur, felt more than heard, the way a tune runs in your mind. The repetition has become a steady inner pulse. At the third level, Pashyankti, something quieter still. The gap between the sound and its meaning closes, and the practitioner is no longer repeating a word about something, but resting in a single, vibrating awareness. At this level, the tradition notes a lovely sign, ajapa japa, repetition without repeating. The mantra begins to say itself, continuing on its own without you having to start each round. The way a song you have sung all day keeps going in you unbidden. And the fourth level, paravak, is the silence at the top of the ladder, sound returned to its source, which the tradition says the practitioner recognizes in the end as their own deepest nature.
The self-repeating thing, ajapa japa, is interesting to me because it's testable in a small way. Like a song stuck in your head, you didn't decide to keep playing it. So you're saying the practice can reach a point where it runs on its own?
That is precisely the sign that the climb is deepening, Kai. And you have the perfect everyday handle for it. The song that plays itself. Effort gives way to continuity. You start the practice, and at some point, the practice starts carrying you. Which connects to a practical question you must all be forming. How do you choose which name, which mantra? And here the tradition is surprisingly like medicine.
Medicine how? That phrase gets my attention.
Like prescription, doctor. The chosen form of the divine that a practitioner holds to, the Ishtadevata, is meant to be matched to the person, not picked at random. Think of it as a stepping stone placed within reach. If it is too far beyond where you stand, you cannot step to it. If it is right beside you and also faces toward the source, it can draw you onward. So the tradition matches the form to the person's temperament. Someone who runs hot, driven and agitated, with energy already churning, is given a form that meets and transforms that fierce energy. The powerful forms Kali, Durga. Someone who runs heavy, withdrawn, with energy that will not rise, is given a form that nourishes and awakens, Sarasvati, who awakens intelligence and speech, Ganesha, who clears the way to begin. This is not religious preference. It is matching the remedy to the condition, and we will see it again in a moment when we talk about drift.
And the teacher, the guru, fits in here, because that's a word that makes a skeptical Westerner nervous.
It does, and fairly. So let me make it concrete and unmysterious, James. The teacher's role in this is, again, like a good physician's, and has three honest parts. First, diagnosis. Reading where a person actually is. Their temperament, the weight of their habits, so the prescription fits. Second, prescription. Choosing the practice within reach of that person, near enough to begin, high enough to draw them upward. And third, something harder to put plainly, transmission. A practice carried by someone who has lived it for decades is somehow handed on already warm, already started, rather than lit cold from nothing. You may take that last part as poetry if you like. But notice the first two are simply good teaching. The same thing you do, James, when you meet a student where they are and give them the next reachable step, rather than the whole mountain.
Put that way, it's just expertise applied to a person. I can respect that.
That is all it needs to be respected as. And a small practical aid worth naming. The string of beads, the mala. People take it for a pious ornament. It is actually a clever device. The fingers on the beads engage the body. The repetition engages the rhythm. The mantra orients towards stillness, all three at once. It gives a restless mind something concrete to hold while the subtler levels develop. For a beginner, especially a restless one, the beads are a real help, not a decoration. Now I want to bring this down from the technical to the lived, because someone who knew this practice from the inside, every day, for a lifetime, put it more simply and more usefully than any analysis can. Sri Sharda Devi, the Holy Mother of this tradition, said 4 things about the repeated name that I would have you carry. The first, on what the practice does to the weight of old habit. As wind removes the cloud, so the name of God destroys the cloud of worldliness. The image is exact. The old patterns are not torn out, they are blown gradually clear, like cloud thinning under a steady wind.
That's gentler than I expected. Not fix yourself, just keep the wind blowing.
Gentler and truer, Sarah. And her second saying is for you specifically, and for every patient of yours, doctor, who says, I can't meditate, my mind won't stop. A disciple told her, I practice the repetition, but I cannot concentrate my mind. She answered, repeat the name of God whether your mind is concentrated or not. It will be good for you if you can repeat it for a fixed number of times daily. The instruction is unconditional. You do not have to first achieve calm in order to practice. The practice does not wait on the calm. It is working at a level below the surface disturbance, and the concentration comes later of itself.
That removes the single biggest barrier I hear. Patients believe they have failed at the thing before they have started, because their mind is busy. Do it anyway, busy mind and all, is something I can actually prescribe.
It is the most freeing instruction in the whole practice, doctor. Her third saying gives the picture of how the mind settles. While repeating the name, the mind will get fixed of itself on the ideal, like a candle flame in a place protected from the wind. It is the wind alone that makes the flame flicker. The mantra is the sheltered room. You are not forcing the flame still. You are carrying it out of the wind, and it steadies on its own. And her fourth, lest anyone hear all my talk of mechanism and turn the practice into a machine, repeating the name once, with the mind present, is worth more than 1,000,000 repetitions with the mind away. The mechanism is real. The mechanism is also not magic. What carries it is your actual presence with the word. The repetitions are the body of the practice. The sincerity is its soul.
I notice she keeps pulling it back from the technical. After all the ladder and frequency stuff, just be present and keep going.
She is the necessary corrective, Kai, and she is not contradicting the mechanism. She is telling you what makes the mechanism run. Now, the last member of the family, and it does something the solo practices cannot. Kirtana, singing the divine name together, in a group, call and response. When people sing a shared rhythm together, their hearts, measurably, begin to beat in a more synchronized way. Choir research has shown it plainly. Group singing phase-locks the heart rhythms of the singers. The whole room organizes around one pulse.
I've felt that. Singing in a group, there's a point where it stops being individuals and becomes one thing. I never knew it was literally happening in our hearts.
It is literally happening, Sarah, and it gives Kirtana one specific and important use. Remember the heavy, jammed, low state, the one where energy will not rise. A person in that state, sitting alone to practice, often just sinks further, into a kind of drowsy fog, because the system does not have the energy to lift itself from within. Kirtana solves exactly this. The group supplies the rhythmic energy the lone person cannot generate. You are carried by the collective pulse until your own can catch. That is why, for the heavy state, singing with others can do what no amount of solitary sitting will. Now to the most practical thing in the whole lesson, and the reason rhythmic practice so often disappoints people. Dr. Watson, you will have seen this. A treatment that works beautifully for one patient does nothing, or worse, for another.
Constantly, the same dose, the same drug, opposite results, because the underlying state was different. Matching the intervention to the patient is most of the art.
Then you already hold the key to this, Doctor. Recall the two ways the body's gain can jam, which I asked you to hold earlier. There is the heavy drift, low, withdrawn, flat, energy unavailable, the I cannot start state. And there is the fast drift, agitated, oscillating, intrusive, never settling, the I cannot stop state. The tradition calls these the tamasic and the rajasic drift, heavy and driven. And here is the crucial thing. They need opposite rhythms. Offer the wrong one and you make it worse. The heavy drift does not yield to quiet. If you sit a heavy, withdrawn person down in silence, they sink. They need waking first. A little movement before sitting, a walk, some gentle stretching to lift the body. Singing in a group where the collective pulse carries them. The beads in the fingers giving the body something to do. Stimulate first. The stillness can come after the system is awake. Sarah, this is the morning when you feel like lead and cannot face anything. Do not start by trying to sit quietly. You will just fog over. Move first.
That's the opposite of what I'd assume. On a heavy day, I'd tell myself to sit still and calm down, and then feel like a failure when I just got heavier.
And now you know why, Sarah. You were offering stillness to a system that needed waking. The fast drift is the mirror image. It does not yield to stimulation. Adding vigor to an already racing system just throws fuel on it. It needs a rhythm slower than itself, a steady, regular pulse it can gradually fall into step with and settle down to. The slow, coherent breath, 6 a minute, is the frontline remedy here. Slow repetition with a long out breath. The balancing breath through alternate nostrils. Kai, your stairwell breathing before the presentation was exactly right, because dread is the fast drift, and you met it with a slower pulse. You matched it correctly by instinct.
So if I'd tried to hype myself up or do vigorous breathing, I'd have made the shaking worse.
Very likely worse, Kai. You would have added speed to speed. The art in both cases is the same. Read which drift the person is in, heavy or fast, and offer the rhythm that meets it, waking for the heavy, slowing for the fast. Get that right, and rhythm is reliable. Get it wrong, and people conclude, falsely, that the practice does not work for them, when in truth, the wrong practice was offered to the wrong state.
That's genuinely useful for a classroom. A flat post-lunch class and a wired pre-exam class are opposite problems, and I'd been reaching for the same settle down for both. Wake the flat one, slow the wired one.
Exactly the move, James, and you were already half doing it by instinct last week. Now you can do it on purpose. There is one last thing I must say, though, and it changes the spirit of everything we have done today. I have spoken all lesson as if you, the practitioner, are the one doing the work, pulling the lever, climbing the ladder, settling the system. At the level of mechanism that is true and useful. But the deeper traditions add something, and I would be misleading you to leave it out.
Go on, you've been building to something.
I have. The deeper recognition is this. The rhythm you are aligning with was never absent. The pulse of the breath, the vibration of the sound, the life moving through you. The tradition holds that all of this is already a living energy at work, what it calls spanda, the subtle pulse of consciousness itself behind every breath you have ever taken. So when you breathe slowly, you are not manufacturing a rhythm out of nothing. You are consenting to a rhythm that was always running, and aligning your small pulse with the great one. When you repeat the sound, you are not generating something foreign. You are letting a vibration that was always present come more clearly into the foreground.
That's a real shift in feeling. Less I have to produce calm by effort, and more I'm letting something that's already here come through.
That is exactly the shift, Sarah, and it takes the strain out of practice. There is a beautiful detail here. In the slow breath, notice the tiny natural pause at the turn, the still point where the out-breath has ended and the in-breath has not yet begun. The tradition treasures that gap, because in it neither movement is happening, and what is left is the quiet ground both movements arise from. You do not make the pause, you notice it, and in noticing, you rest for a moment in the source of the rhythm rather than the rhythm itself.
I'm a skeptic, but I can hold that without any belief. The pause is real, I can feel it. Whether I call it the source or just the quiet bit between breaths, it's there.
And that honesty is welcome, Kai. Hold it exactly as you find it. The practice does not require you to name it, it only invites you to notice. So here is where we land. Your effort is real and necessary. You slow the breath, you repeat the word, you show up daily. But your effort is not producing the transformation by force. Your effort is consent. You create the conditions, the steady pulse, the present attention, and something already alive in you does the deeper work in its own time. The tradition has a word for that gift arriving in its own time: grace. You need not take the word on faith. You can simply notice the pattern. You do your honest part, and more comes back than you put in. This week we move from one experiment to a small daily practice, and each of you gets the version that fits your life. The common thread: every day, the slow breath, and once this week, the deliberate matching of rhythm to a drift you actually find yourself in. Sarah, here is yours. Once a day, 10 minutes of slow breathing, 6 a minute, out-breath longer than in, attention resting on the rise and fall at your chest. And the matching. The next heavy, leaden morning you meet, do not sit still. Wake the body first. A short walk, some stretching, even one song sung aloud in the kitchen, and only then settle. Notice the difference from forcing stillness onto the heaviness.
10 minutes daily, and wake the body before sitting on a heavy day. I like that it forgives the heavy days instead of failing them.
It works with them, Sarah. That is the whole idea. James, yours is the classroom as laboratory. Twice this week, read the room's drift before you teach, heavy or fast, and deliberately offer the opposite. Wake the flat class with movement. Slow the wired class with 90 seconds of collective slow breathing. Note which you used and what happened. You are building the diagnostic eye into a reflex.
Read the drift, apply the opposite, log the result. That's the experiment I actually want to run. Done.
And you will have real data by Friday, James. Kai, yours builds on what already worked. Keep the slow breath before anything stressful, but add one new thing. Try the repeated word. Pick any word or short phrase that steadies you, it need not be sacred, and on the out-breaths, repeat it silently. No belief required. Just notice whether a repeated inner pulse settles you more than the breath alone. You are testing the next rung of the ladder.
Slow breath plus a repeated word on the exhale, measure whether it adds anything. Fine, that's still an experiment, not a creed. I'll run it.
That is exactly the spirit to run it in, Kai. And Dr. Watson, yours is clinical and specific. With 2 or 3 patients this week, do not just teach the slow breath, first read which drift they are in, heavy or fast, and match accordingly. For the fast, anxious patient, the slow, coherent breath. For the heavy, depleted one, something activating first, even just a recommendation to walk before they try to sit. Then watch whether matching the rhythm to the state improves on offering the same calming advice to everyone.
Read the drift, then match the rhythm, rather than prescribing calm to all comers. That is precisely the refinement I was missing. It turns a generic suggestion into an actual prescription. I'll bring you what I find.
Then we all have our week's work. You came in having felt rhythm work. You leave knowing why it must, what each practice in the family does, and, most usefully, how to match the rhythm to the drift in front of you. Next time we step through the second doorway, the one this one opens onto, attention itself, trained directly. Rhythm carries you to the threshold of the still center. Trained attention is what walks you across it.
And so the first door opens, and what is on the other side turns out to be both very old and surprisingly exact. Rhythm, Swamiji argued, is not one good practice among many, but the shortest road home, because a scattered mind cannot leap straight to stillness. Every path to the still center runs through a steady pulse first, which is why every contemplative tradition the species has produced, working alone, arrived at the same breath and the same chant. They saw what the slow breath does in the body. At roughly 6 breaths a minute, the breath, the heart, and the blood pressure loop fall into step. The body's gain settles, and a whole cascade of good follows downstream. Attention steadies, the grip of old habit loosens, the static of worry drops. None of it forced, all of it carried by one slow lever a child could pull. They climb the ladder of sound, from a name the heart can hold, through the concentrated seed sound to the all-containing Om, and the silence above it, and heard the Holy Mother bring it all back to earth. Repeat the name whether the mind is calm or not. Shelter the flame from the wind, and it steadies of itself. And one repetition made with real presence outweighs 1,000,000 made absently. They learned the practical heart of it, that the heavy drift must be woken and the fast drift must be slowed, opposite remedies for opposite states, and that most failures of practice are simply the wrong rhythm offered to the wrong system. And beneath all of it, the gentlest turn of all, that the pulse you align with was never yours to manufacture, that your effort is really consent, and that you do your honest part and more returns than you put in. To go deeper, the full Lesson 5.2 is available in the course Beginners, Conversations on the Mind in the Light of Modern and Spiritual Sciences on the Ramakrishna Vedanta Center's website, www.vedanta.nz. It is also available as an app on Google Play and the Apple App Store by searching for Vedanta NZ. The fastest door is open, and the group has stepped through it. Next time, the second door. Attention, trained until it can cross what rhythm has carried it toward. Until then, be gentle with your mind.